Divorce attorneys of Reddit, what was the most stupid reason two people wanted to divorce? Story 1. She saw a picture of him contra dancing he'd posted on Facebook. She knew he went contra dancing. That part wasn't the surprise. In fact, I'm still confused about this one. Story 2. My client and his wife were into a role-playing game, I think Second Life. Everyone had an avatar. I suspect that his and his wife's were much more sprightly than they were in real life. Anyway, he suspected that she was being unfaithful to him in the game, so he created a fake avatar and stalked her in the game. Sure enough, she was running around on him, having virtual with another bloke, or bloke avatar anyway. That was it. Story 3. My friend's parents divorced because his mother wanted a horse. His father argued that they can't keep a horse in a 6th-floor apartment and don't have enough resources or money to rent a stable. Then she fucked her son's math teacher and became a crackhead. I feel sorry for everyone involved. Story 4. I'm not a divorce attorney, but my former subordinate got divorced over Pokemon cards. At one point during the separation, she came to work to accuse him of stealing some of her rares. It got near physical, and we had to have security forces remove the spouse so we could get back to work. They were a hot mess. Story 5. Obligatory. Not a lawyer, but a lawyer I know got a case because the husband didn't change his Facebook status to married quickly enough after the wedding. It was like 2 weeks. The judge laughed at the lady and made them get marriage counseling. Lawyer pocketed north of $1,000 for that. Story 6. Back in 1996, a woman filed for divorce, seemingly out of nowhere, to end her marriage of 25 years. 2 years later, her ex-husband received a letter in the mail about her lump sum lottery winnings. Turns out that 11 days before filing for divorce, she had won $1. $3 million in the lottery. She didn't disclose this at all during the divorce proceedings in an effort to keep the winnings all to herself, as he would have received half under California law. When the ex-husband took this to court, the judge said she had violated state asset disclosure laws and gave all of her winnings to him. Her lawyer apparently said that if she had said something during the divorce, it's possible she might have been able to keep all of it or come to some agreement, but because of what she did, she lost it all. Story 7. Kid got one elephant ride too many. Mom and dad agreed before dad took daughter to circus that one elephant ride should be plenty. Mom later finds out that dad let daughter have two, not one as agreed, but 2 elephant rides. As mom would describe it, he's doubling down again, trying to get her to hate me. I know it. Why the else is someone letting their kid ride an elephant halfway around the whole town? Everybody knows now. Story 8. I have a friend who used to be a security guard at a courthouse. He said one time he had to watch over a divorce proceeding between an 80-year-old man and his 40-year-old Vietnam wife. She said in broken English, she wanted to divorce him because he couldn't satisfy her anymore. During the beginning of the case, she would yell mean things about this guy, and the judge had to constantly tell her to be quiet. The old man never said a word. Eventually, the judge said, "We will have to continue on a future date." She immediately said, "Then forget it," got up and walked out of the courtroom. Story 9. I knew a couple who married super early and divorced so he could join the Naval Academy. Apparently you can't enter if you're married. They stayed together and remarried after he graduated. Story 10. I know this isn't the reason for the divorce, sorry, but it made me wonder what precipitated the divorce since it was so paranoid. My sister worked for a divorce attorney, and she had to field a couple of phone calls from a guy in the midst of a messy divorce. He insisted that his ex was putting rocks on his lawn to mess with the lawnmower, and he was trying to somehow add that to the divorce proceedings. Story 11. Not an attorney, but my mom is a paralegal. There was one case that kept dragging along because they were fighting over the luggage. Once that was settled, they started arguing over a $25 plastic palm tree. That palm tree prompted the case to go into mediation, costing both of them around $1,000 each just for the mediation. Story 12. Not a divorce or a lawyer. But my ex years ago left me because I wanted chickens in the front yard. The conversation was something along the lines of how our futures just didn't line up. Turns out he was cheating, but, blame it on the free-range hens. It became a cherished phrase almost immediately. Story 13. A couple in Australia threatened to divorce if gay marriage became legal. But surprise, surprise, when it eventually became legal, they didn't go through with it. Story 14. An elderly friend of mine divorced his wife so she would qualify for Medicaid and could afford her treatment for a terminal illness. They'd been married 40 years, and he had strong religious values about the sanctity of marriage. The state caseworker even visited the house to make sure he wasn't living there. In her last difficult days, our stupid, greedy medical system was forcing them apart. He died brokenhearted and penniless not long after she passed. Every dime he had worked his lifetime to save either went to her medical bills or the unnecessary expense of keeping 2 households to get health insurance. Story 15. NAL. But my dad stated in court that he was divorcing my mom because she was always asking him to take out the trash or mow the lawn or calling him at work to ask him to pick up milk. Adult stuff like maintaining a home and family. Her lawyer turned to her and just said, "You're dodging a bullet here. Someday you'll be glad he left." Turned out he was cheating on her. My mom made a very good life for herself. At 71 years old, she can afford a house cleaning service and pays someone to maintain her lawn. Karma's A. Story 16. A much older woman who had been married for a very long time told me that one morning over breakfast, out of the blue, she had a burning desire to pick up her butter knife and stab her husband to death. She took that as a sign that maybe their relationship was toxic. Story 17. In Italy, apparently you can save on taxes when buying first house for your own living. If you married, it counts as one for the couple. Some people are getting divorced when buying another house to save on taxes again. Story 18. Not a divorce attorney or anything, but when I was a kid, a 15-year-old girl wanted to get married to a 20-year-old guy. Because of her age, she needed her parents. So she begged and pleaded with her parents, who eventually allowed it for when she turned 16. But the guy divorced her after 4 years because she refused to have or even kiss, like it never occurred to her was involved. I suppose this is more of a reflection of the education she received. Story 19. So, back in the pre-iPhone era, there was a newly married couple in my apartment building, maybe 3-4 months in. I come home and hear them fighting about what the exact time is. Like one was saying it's 8:15 and the other was like, no, it's 8:13. So the next day, the guy just walked out and I never saw him again. Later, I found out they got divorced over some silly fight. Story 20. My grandmother was stepping down into their fishing boat. My grandfather was already in the boat. He was holding the pier to stabilize the boat. A rogue wave came, pushed the boat violently away from the pier, and Grandma nearly fell into the water. She accused him of intentionally trying to embarrass her. They barely spoke for 3 months. My grandfather refused to divorce because we're Catholic, but offered to live apart. I was about 10 years old, living with them during this time. Talk about a crash course in small talk. Story 21. Not a lawyer, but my dad's friend got divorced because they couldn't agree on what kind of house to buy. He wanted one with an apartment so they can have extra income, and she didn't want some stranger living in her house, so they split up over it. Story 22. A guy I used to work with said his wife divorced him because she claimed God spoke to her and told her he wanted her to move the French Riviera to be wined and dined by wealthy men. Because apparently God encourages casual hookups, and wealthy men in the Riviera are lining up to sleep with 40-something mothers of 4. Story 23. Cher lasted just a bit over a week with Greg Allman before she filed for divorce. Eventually reconciled, but in the end they divorced. She filed because of his drug addiction, something she should have had insight about if she had taken the time to actually get to know who he was before making the decision to marry. Instead, she married him after just over 3 days of being divorced to Sonny Bono. Imagine that. Story 24. I was cohabitating with and engaged to a guy, and we broke up after a week-long beach house vacation with my family because I beat him in front of everyone else playing Scrabble. He was a doctor with a huge ego and said that I was supposed to let him win to make him look good. After a week of the silent treatment when we got home, he moved out. That's okay. He was a gambling addict as well. And that was bothering me, so I was sort of pushing his buttons, I think. He wasn't as angry when I confronted him about his gambling problem, so it's funny to me that the last straw was Scrabble. Story 25. Not a lawyer, but my own personal experience. I was married for 11 years and my ex-husband wanted the divorce. He said, I don't want to lower my standards for you. He didn't want to do anything legal, so I would be forced to stay at home and continue to do things normally. He just wanted to see other women and still have a stay-at-home mom. I had to file for divorce and he fought everything because he didn't want to pay up. He wanted the divorce, and even though I was filing for it, he didn't want to give up what he was ordered to give. He wanted me to agree that I didn't have any rights to the assets and money because I was a SAH mom for 6 years. It's been about a year and a half. Now I am in school full-time, work 2 jobs, am a single mom. Yet somehow life is easier without him here. He gave me a blessing I didn't even know I wanted. Story 26. There's not really a good answer to your question. I've had tons of clients who got divorced over all sorts of fucked up and really good reasons. I haven't had one where the reason given was just absolutely petty and pointless. It's an expensive, very public and drawn-out process. Almost no one gets divorced on a whim. Story 27. I know a couple that wanted a divorce after 35 years because one of them were not happy with who their son was dating. People, man. Proof that even time can't heal stupidity. Story 28. My ex-wife, I was repairing a pipe in the bathroom sink. I tell her, please give me a glass, I need to drink water, from the sink tap. She screams, are you crazy? Go to the kitchen fountain, the water in the bathroom fountain, you never have to drink it. She believed that all over the world we had 2 types of water and double pipes that carry 2 types of water in each house, one for the kitchen and one for the bathroom. Story 29. Not a divorce at any, but still know this husband fapping to a German Piern. She wanted the divorce not because he watched Piern, but because the person he was fapping to did not have nice. Story 30. Stupid that it had to happen, but technically a good reason. My mom, who worked for our state's welfare agency for 35 years, convinced her brother and sister-in-law to get divorced. They were both my mom's best friends. My mom and her bro were Irish twins. And my aunt and uncle were in love until the day my uncle died. But my uncle worked in construction and had no savings, and so, when he got sick, he and my unemployed aunt had no income. This was my aunt's second marriage, and her first husband, a teacher, never remarried and eventually passed away. In my state, even if you divorce your spouse, you can take their social security when they die if one. You have none in two. There are no other legitimate claims. She was a stay-at-home parent and never earned income, so she had no social security, and my uncle put almost nothing into the fund, so his monthly checks were pitiful. So, they divorced, she petitioned for her first husband's SS, got it, and then they got remarried. To this day, even though my uncle is now deceased, we are forbidden from mentioning to her kids that her and my uncle were divorced for a few months. Story 31. How about the most stupid reason not to divorce? A good buddy of mine married a woman who almost immediately after the wedding developed back problems. Back problems that required her to quit her job as a florist. For the last, no kidding, almost 28 years, he's lived alone, in a studio apartment so she can live in a 4-bedroom house. The reason he refuses to divorce her is because of her medical condition, and his job, cop, gives her golden level coverage. He also mumbles stuff about their 2 kids, but they're collage-bound now. He also forced himself to do the last 10 years. He's retiring from his department his spring at 30 years, because at 30 years, his contract gives him and his spouse 100% medical coverage for life. He hates his life. I hate it, and her, for him. Bonus. Her boyfriend, who makes some nice bucks, lives with her, in the house my buddy is paying for. Story 32. This question doesn't make sense to me. There are no stupid reasons people get divorced. If someone divorces over their spouse liking the wrong TV shows, it has nothing to do with the TV shows. Their reason for divorce is they aren't in love with this person and don't want to be married to them anymore, and that's a great reason to divorce. Story 33. Not a lawyer here, but the stories I've seen of people being forced to consider divorce to afford medical bills, even though they still love each other, are pretty stupid. In a very different way than you were thinking when you wrote this question, I think. Story 34. The couple had a 7-year-old child, and the mom was some crazy anti-vax, crazy vegan. The dad gave the child a 6-piece McDonald's chicken nugget for his birthday, and the mom went insane. She wanted full custody over the kid, but didn't get it thankfully. Story 35. Although my brother had stupid reasons, my mom almost going to the police takes the cake. So long story as short as I can make it goes, my bro started cheating with a 20-year-old that worked for him. He was about 40 at the time. She may have been as young as 17, 18. Sister-in-law catches him not once, but twice. They separate and he moves out. My brother's reasoning for straying was because she was mean to him and yelled at him twice. The first instance was like 10 years ago, and the second was after he was already cheating. So the best part of the story. He needed someone to watch the kids on his days and he had to work. My sister-in-law had to approve the person. He asked my narcissistic mother, who is one of those that will not change her routine or life for anything, set in het ways. She not only refused, but she threatened to go to the police and say sister-in-law was blackmailing her to watch the kids. Not because they were going to keep her from the kids. No, because they wanted her to watch them and get paid. Of all the dumb things, my mom thinks this definitely up there. I wish we would have pushed her to go to the police just to see and hear their reaction to her blackmail claim. Story 36. Not a divorce lawyer or practitioner of law defense of any kind, but boy, have I got a story to share. My cousin, well, she's got a problem in that she can't seem to be happy being single and has an intense desire for that fairy tale happily married life. A few years back, she starts talking with this Mormon bloke and claims to be in love with him, has met him lots of times, spends hours on video calls with him and the like. After a few months, he proposes, and she sorts out her first passport, leaves her son with an ex-boyfriend, he was as close as being this kid's dad as possible, and swears up and down to the rest of her family that she isn't going to get married. First time outside the country, possibly first time she ever met this guy. She lies to us about this a lot, and she gets married. Before this, she converts to Mormonism and tells us how she feels so connected to them, which she hasn't felt for so long. She never goes out, so kind of hard to feel connected, but still drinks wine and smokes. She spends a while talking about being happily married and how she imagines her dad would be so happy for her. Spoiler alert, he wouldn't be. He hated religion and Americans, and this guy was super religious and, he'd be rolling in his grave. About a year later, she's in the process of getting the unconsummated marriage annulled. Straight up annulled, no divorce, just throwing the thing away. There was also the time she got catfished. One of the pictures featured on gay blogs for years and was of a bodybuilder that was actually fairly local and married with a kid. She claimed to have seen that guy, who was a former soldier, firefighter, and a model. He did have a connection to the fire service, but he was far from a sculpted Adonis he pretended to be. I think she still spoke with him for a while. Story 37. Not a lawyer, and indirectly the cause. My friend and I were competitive and always tried to mess with each other while competing. One time, while we were drinking, I don't remember what we were doing, but I said to him, "I fucked your sister." His sister's husband heard me say that and confronted her about it. This led to a huge argument and eventually their divorce. The guy was in, and she is significantly happier now without him. Story 38, not a lawyer, but my uncle once got a marriage annulled because she got mad at him for getting a sunburn on the honeymoon. Dude's probably 98% Irish with the pastiest skin you've ever seen, and she expected him to not get a sunburn? Story 39, not an attorney and not a reason, but still a stupid thing involving a divorce. When I was volunteering at an animal shelter, there was one dog who was there simply because his owners got divorced and couldn't agree on who should get the dog. So they abandoned him in the, thankfully, no-kill shelter instead. Poor dog was so big, he barely fit in the small kennel. His bedding was just blankets on the floor because he was too big for the usual dog cots / beds. If he stood with his back to the wall, his front almost reached the kennel's gate. I don't know whatever happened to him, but I hope he found a forever home with nice humans and a lot of space. Story 40. They decided to live together, but she didn't want you pay the rent, the gas, water, anything. She said she just brought to the relationship. Although, she told he was a cheapstaker. Samantha you ***** chi. Story 41. Not personal, but a friend. This couple, probably about 27 years old, each, went into his office crying. He said it looked like they were crying for hours, so he decided to take them in and hear the case and whatever. Apparently, the woman, who was still crying, had asked the man to buy her cookie dough so they could make cookies for her friends' get-together. The woman said he bought cookies instead from the grocery store bakery, and she flipped out on him for not caring about what she wants. The man filed for divorce the day of. Story 42. Used to work in family law as paralegal during the 50 Shades of Grey hype. She wanted too much. He wanted out of the marriage. The judge literally called the lawyers to the bench and asked if this was real. They had been married for 20-plus years, very successful couple, who were now trying to split millions in assets and business ventures. So out of curiosity, I binge-watched all 3 movies after the last one came out. I wanted that time of my life back, but I saw nothing horribly wrong with it. It is forever dubbed the 50 Shades case. Story 43. Not an attorney, rather this story is from my past. Immigrant from India in the US, have a decent software consulting job in the East Coast region. Arranged marriage wedding in India. The then-wife also had an immigrant visa consulting job in a city located in the New England region. Flew back to our respective cities in the US after the wedding procession in India. Post-wedding, the very first time I went to meet her in her city in the US, she asked me completely out of the blue, at 3 a.m. in the morning, whether I was willing to adopt a kid. I was completely, utterly surprised. Lee. Are you crazy? If you want a baby, if your parents want a grandchild, then let's make a baby, was my obvious reply. Essentially, all attempts for conjugation failed, about 4 times total in India and in the US. She just wouldn't, kind of shy away almost always, and I was like, she's a virgin, that's all right. I am not a virgin, and we never discussed that. The topic never came up, and I never minded whether she was or not. Couple of weeks later, over a phone call, we were making plans to meet during an up-and-coming holiday-long weekend, when she kept insisting that we may not be able to, make the baby. I was triggered, politely asked her to accompany me to doctor consultations, reproductive and mental health checkups, and that I would also participate willingly in all of it. She agreed. I drove to her town, to our apartment, and there was this random middle-aged mentor gentleman, as she introduced him to me, pointing a revolver at me, demanding me not to create any more scenes and drag the whole thing into Separation Town. Rest of it all is how much it costed me to get rid of this terrible marriage. Been single ever since. Story 44. Not a divorce attorney, but my stepdad loved World of Warcraft more than my mom, and my brother, sister, and I. He got pretty toxic, and then just left after some crazy stuff he did. Story 45. Not mine, and it wasn't a divorce, but they were together. So, my aunt told me this story. They played the Monopoly cheating version. They stole cash from his GF, and she just began an argument, and at last they broke up with each other. Story 46. I'm not one, but my grandfather, I call him the big idiot, tried to divorce my grandmother because, I'm going to cite his word, she is ugly. Yeah, that said my grandma ugly, then run away and 10 years later come back trying to put my family all out of my house. I hate he so much. Story 47. My friend Male got divorced after only a few months of marriage. His wife said she couldn't handle the intimacy. She had prior mental health issues as well, which weren't dealt with professionally. Could have mentioned that before marriage. Story 48. The degree of stupidity a couple uses in their application should increase the validity for their application. If one or both are desperate enough to use stupid reasons, they obviously don't belong together. Story 49. Not a divorce attorney, but my aunt and uncle divorced because they couldn't decide on a new fridge, which then opened up to the argument, you don't understand me, blah blah blah. Story 51 said they heard them say they were going to be a tourist for their new job, but they were going to be a pharmacist. Don't ask me how you mess up that bad. Story 51. If it's not cheating, I'd bet most of the reasons are stupid. When relationships fall apart, it's hundreds of small things, and that last small thing is the straw that broke the camel's back. Story 52. My friend divorced his wife because she loved the dogs more. She'd make him peanut butter and jelly sandwich for dinner and make the dogs grilled chicken LOL. Story 53. ITT. A lot of guys who think that if you get divorced, your wife automatically gets half of everything. No. You take out what you bring in unless you have to. Asterisk, gasped, asterisk, provide for the kids you helped create. Story 54. They couldn't agree on the location for their second vacation home. They already had a beach home in Florida that they visited for 2 weeks a year. He wanted to get a hunting cabin in the mountains. She wanted a ski lodge in the mountains. Story 55. I'm guessing that 9 times out of 10, if a couple gives a stupid-sounding reason for their divorce, it's because the real reasons are just no one's business, or too complicated to sum up quickly. Usually it's not just one reason anyway. Point being, you may never know the real reasons, which I say as a divorced person. Story 56. So there was this 19-YO wife who had already given birth to a child, and there was this 22-YO husband who is a local taxi driver. They were splitting because the husband forgot to buy a tube light. They had eloped and did not want to involve their parents. The lady I recall was not even a high school graduate. Story 57. Not a lawyer, but my friend's wife in a fairly happy marriage, though let it be said that this woman is crazy, divorced him because he found out he had a 12-year-old daughter from a previous relationship and started getting to know that daughter. Because her parents are wealthy and she's expecting an inheritance, she was convinced that these people will try to take what's mine. These people, meaning the daughter and her mother. They still live together as husband and wife, raising their children, but are legally divorced because she thinks someone might come after money she may not even get. Story 58. They too much together. The grass seems always greener. They romanticize something that was real yesterday, but never tomorrow. Unfortunately, this question is a dumbest question. Why couples stay together is for the kids, and that should be revered, not marginalized. Thank you. Story 59. Not a lawyer, but a paralegal. I've been involved in representing quite a few people in divorce proceedings for stupid, but the too big case definitely takes the cake. Young religious couple married for 3 months. Wife claims irreconcilable differences, and when asked to elaborate, tells the court that her new husband's penis is too big, and he did not disclose this before they married. Story 60. Not me, my friend's dad, a divorce attorney, and said that the wife wanted to divorce because the husband had thrown out her perfume and their 6.5-YO was crying. So yeah, that's how boomers be. Story 61. While my neighbor's husband was doing military stuff in the Middle East for a few years, the wife fooled around with other guys and they ended up divorcing when the husband came back. They had 2 daughters and a nice house and everything. I can't believe she would do something like that. My husband is off defending the country. Time to cheat.